I never went looking for spirituality. That's important for me to say because people can project assumptions onto awakening experiences. They imagine someone intentionally seeking enlightenment, studying mysticism, meditating for years, becoming a vegan, joining an ashram, or consciously pursuing expanded states of awareness. This was not my experience. Up until 2017, I had absolutely no conscious awareness of Kundalini, metaphysics, energetic awakening, or consciousness beyond the religious framework I had been raised inside of. I came from an evangelical upbringing rooted heavily in fear, shame, trauma, and psychological conditioning. My understanding of God was deeply intertwined with suffering, punishment, guilt, performance, tithing, and unworthiness. And beneath all of that programming, if I'm being honest, I saw myself as fundamentally broken, not divine, broken. I carried severe trauma, nervous system dysregulation, self abandonment, and victim consciousness without realizing how deeply those things had shaped my identity. I didn't have language for any of it at that time. I simply thought this was what life felt like. My mother despised me and abused me on all levels. The woman was and is brutal. My dad committed suicide. Alcoholism and addiction ran rampant in my immediate family, where everyone does anything they can to escape truth, accountability, or authentic healing. Due to a lack of awareness, I married a volatile man who had the same energy as my mother. I entered that marriage with my spine intact. I left that marriage with two titanium cages holding my lumbar spine together. I just couldn't seem to escape the cycle of severe abuse. I saw myself as someone who was dealt a shitty hand and just needed to find a way to endure it. Then in 2017, reality itself began changing. At first, it was subtle enough that I tried to rationalize it away. But eventually, the synchronicities became so relentless, so mathematically improbable, that my logical mind could no longer explain what was happening. And I didn't even know what synchronicities were up until that point. People from my past started reappearing full circle out of nowhere. Conversations repeated themselves through completely unrelated people. I would randomly run into people and places with timing that felt impossible to dismiss as coincidence. It felt as though life itself was reorganizing around unresolved energy that needed to surface. At the same time, my body began changing too. My hands and feet would burn intensely. My body often felt electrically charged. Waves of energy would move through me so powerfully that at times I genuinely feared something was medically wrong. Then came the visions, the dreams, the heightened sensitivity. I became aware of emotional undercurrents in people almost immediately. I could feel manipulation, dishonesty, pain, grief, unconsciousness, and suppressed emotion before words were even spoken. It felt as though my entire perceptual field had expanded beyond what I previously believed human beings were capable of experiencing. And because I had no framework for any of it, I truly believed I might be losing my mind. It was terrifying. I think this is one of the most misunderstood aspects of spontaneous Kundalini awakening. People often romanticize it online as though it is inherently blissful or aesthetically beautiful. My experience was not beautiful in the beginning. It was terrifying. Not because the awakening itself was malicious, but because it dismantled every structure I had unconsciously built my identity around. Kundalini does not merely amplify light, it amplifies truth, and truth destroys illusions. Everything false began surfacing simultaneously. Trauma, conditioning, unconscious coping mechanisms, inherited belief systems, emotional suppression, self hatred, grief, shame, and the survival entities I had built in order to function. I was being forced to confront not only the pain I had experienced, but the distorted sense of self that pain had created inside of me. The most difficult part was not the visions or energetic phenomena. The most difficult part was confronting how deeply I had been conditioned to disconnect from my own divinity. That word can sound abstract or performative now because it gets used so casually online, but I mean something very specific by it. I had spent most of my life believing I was separate from God, separate from truth, separate from worthiness, separate from my own intuition and inner knowing. I had been conditioned to distrust myself at a profound level. So when the awakening began activating direct knowing inside of me, my conditioning revolted against it. Yeah. Everything I had been taught was built on separation. Separation from body, separation from intuition, separation from truth, separation from self, and ultimately, separation from source consciousness itself. The awakening shattered that separation directly, not intellectually, experientially. The rising began in 2017, completely unbeknownst to me, and continued intensifying until March 18th of 2018, the day it fully rose. I remember my vision becoming blurred for over 3 hours after it fully rose. But what occurred internally was even more profound than any of the physical symptoms. For the first time in my entire life, I experienced complete peace. Not excitement, not emotional numbness, not temporary relief, peace. A depth of peace so profound that I realized I had never actually known what true peace felt like before that moment. And within that state, I saw through all of the illusions that had shaped my identity and suffering. I saw how trauma conditions consciousness, how shame distorts perception, how unconscious family systems perpetuate pain across generations, how society disconnects people from their own inner knowing, how fear manipulates identity, how survival becomes personality. And underneath all of it, I remembered who I truly am. That is still the closest language I can give the experience. Remembrance, not ego inflation, not spiritual superiority, not delusion, not being a chosen one. Remembrance, a direct knowing that beneath the conditioning, abuse, trauma, shame, fear, masks, and fragmentation, there exists something eternal and untouched, something far deeper than the identities we build in order to survive. I also need to say something that I believe is deeply important. Awakening does not mean you stop feeling pain. If anything, you feel everything more deeply than before. That is one of the biggest misconceptions people have. Awakening does not numb you or have you blissed out all the time. It actually sensitizes you. Grief becomes deeper, love becomes deeper, discernment becomes deeper, compassion becomes deeper, loss becomes deeper. The difference is that you stop psychologically suffering in the same way because you stop resisting truth. You stop rewriting narratives in order to avoid discomfort. You stop escaping through distraction, addiction, fantasy, performance, validation, denial, or spiritual bypassing. You stop abandoning yourself inside your own emotions. Instead, you develop the capacity to sit with what is real. That changes everything. Over the last 8 years, that has been the true work for me, integration. Because awakening can happen suddenly, integration does not. Integration has required years of confronting trauma, repairing my nervous system, dismantling false identities, developing discernment, learning emotional regulation, facing painful truths, and learning how to remain inside my body instead of escaping it when life became difficult. And honestly, I believe that is where the real initiation begins, not during the awakening itself, after it. Because eventually the intensity settles, the synchronicities normalize, the nervous system stabilizes, and then life asks a much deeper question. Can you embody what you now know? Can you tell the truth about your life? Can you stop betraying yourself for belonging? Can you stop performing identities that no longer align? Can you stay conscious when it would be so much easier to numb out? Can you sit with pain without collapsing into victimhood? Can you remain open-hearted without abandoning discernment? That, to me, is the real work of awakening. Not escaping humanity, not at all. Becoming conscious enough to fully inhabit it. I am Kat Grace. Hit that like and subscribe button if this resonates. Thank you for being here. Until next time, namaste.